Trinidad and Tobago Special Report. Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the place for business.
There's a rhythmic pace building up in Trinidad and Tobago, and it isn't just the traditional sounds of steel pan and calypso. The Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is the biggest supplier of liquefied natural gas to the United States and over half of all their imports of ammonia. The country is rich in both oil and gas, and there's a dash for further development in both energy and non-energy sectors. Flush with revenue, but will diversification be carried out in the right direction to ensure economic stability? Juliet Errington presents a half-hour show looking at one of the Caribbean's wealthiest nations and examines their blaring bid for the foreign investor.
This twin-island democratic republic put out the welcome mat for foreign holidaymakers in the 1960s. But foreign investment is just as, if not even more, warmly received than those arriving with their beach bags. The Republic of Trinidad and Tobago now boasts the highest per capita foreign investment in Latin America and the Caribbean, estimated at €1 billion. Over 150 international companies are already established in Trinidad and Tobago, including BP Amoco, Johnson & Johnson, Citigroup and Coca-Cola. If the first rule of business is location, 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 then Trinidad and Tobago is on the money. Safely south of the Hurricane Belt, it's a trade gateway to North America, Central America and Latin America. In fact, Venezuela is just 11 kilometers that way. Location has not been the only blessing for a nation with a population of just over 1 million. The Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is rolling in gas and oil. With a gross domestic product of €13 billion, over 40% comes from energy. Since the 1980s, successive governments have welcomed private investors willing to develop the country's offshore gas.
Trinidad and Tobago is open for business. It's the place for doing business in the Western Hemisphere. When the investor locates in Trinidad and Tobago, he comes not to sell to the Trinidadian, but to sell to the markets around us, to the Caribbean, to Latin America, to Europe, to the Americas, as it were. And that is the first benefit he gets. In addition, he gets the benefit of favorable tax treatment, of national treatment as an investor.
Dubbed the Caribbean Tiger by the New York Times, the country has aggressively pursued foreign investment. It only recently abandoned a state-run economy, liberalising its market in 1992. Now, some of the more attractive investment incentives consist of a bilateral treaty with the United States and agreements with countries including the United Kingdom, Ireland and France. There's double taxation relief. Corporation tax sits at 25%, and the country allows for 100% foreign ownership. As a result of this new investment and high energy prices, Trinidad's economy is growing at Chinese rates. Unemployment stands at 7%, down from a peak of 22% in 1987. Over the last 3 years, growth in GDP averaged 6.1% annually and 7% in 2005. And this year is forecast for at least another 6% increase from last year.
Trinidad and Tobago is an emerging economic giant in the Caribbean. We are accruing revenues at an enhanced rate which we are applying. Yes, we are developing rapidly, but while we develop rapidly, we are also taking the steps that are necessary to ensure that the country and the economy continues to operate very smoothly.
The steamy Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is running hot on more than just an oil and gas boom. Along with music, the government has identified several non-energy sectors: fish processing, food and beverages, yachting, merchant marine, printing and packaging, and film as strategic opportunities for business development.
What we're doing, we're using funds, excess funds from the energy sector to build that long-term sustainability in the non-energy sector. And that is why we are looking for industries where we have a competitive advantage. That's why we have the market access agreements to attract the foreign investor to Trinidad and Tobago.
Entertainment is estimated to generate around 45 million euros a year here, and in the global economy, cultural industries have become major catalysts of growth. Some of the major industry development incentives for cultural goods include: companies can obtain 150% tax rebate on related expenditure, tax exemptions for up to 7 years for gains and profits of the project. This song by Kes the Band was picked up by ES Sports FIFA World Cup and is the first Trinidad and Tobago song to be on an international video game. And don't forget the famous carnival. Locals boast it's better than Rio's and generates around 20 million euros a year. The Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is just below the hurricane belt, a fortuitous location which translates to potential growth in the yachting industry. The country's Chaguaramas Peninsula has two main products: repairs and hurricane storage, and over the years has emerged as the largest yacht repair centre in the Caribbean.
Our country has embarked on a program to develop a whole yachting industry to satisfy the need out there. And of course, our strategic location with reference to weather patterns and conditions makes us, puts us in a very good position to be successful at it.
Under the Income Tax Act, individuals are allowed a tax deduction of up to 25%. Yachting repair and other services are VAT exempt for non-citizens and non-residents of Trinidad and Tobago. Food and beverage have experienced relatively high levels of expansion in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, with real GDP growth averaging 8.1% between 2002 and 2005, with exports worth about 115 million euros. From the simple food street stall to factories, food and beverage can turn good profit.
There is activity, but it's underdeveloped. There's land, people, equipment, machinery, energy, all the possible inputs.
With around 420 registered firms, including Coca-Cola, food and beverage is approximately 9% of the country's GDP.
We have been allowed to operate as freely as possible in terms of the relative importation, accessing the inputs that we need in terms of getting the people and the support that we have.
The agricultural sector has been profitable in the past. Hampered by focus on the energy sector, there are some shortages in labour and resources, but there are solutions. Budding opportunities exist in added value and processing. Exotic fruits and vegetables are grown well here, but locally there isn't the money to transform the products worldwide.
If you adopt the appropriate technology and target the appropriate crops, there are excellent opportunities for producing for the Caribbean markets and for the European markets and for markets all around the world. Indeed, yes, there are.
One asset the country has up its sleeve for both energy and non-energy sectors is its workforce. Citigroup here proudly employs 100% Trinidad nationals. The country has over a 90% literacy rate, and as part of their 2020 vision, the government is on a spending spree, which includes free tertiary education.
Well, I think it would help to educate a lot of the people that would not have been able to afford it, and I think education is a step forward, as you know, so it would be a very, very, very good forward step towards bringing the country towards a more like a first world country rather than a third world country.
Because most of my friends who were in like Form 6, Form 5, they were going to work after, and now they say, well, they're going to further their education for sure because they have to make the most of the opportunity while it's here.
They've also kicked off a Spanish-speaking program. By 2020, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago hope to be a Spanish-speaking nation in an attempt to integrate their economy further. It's compulsory in schools, and it's hoped this proficiency will lead to the country being efficient intermediaries between the English North and the Spanish South and Central.
What kind of labour force are you trying to create here?
It is a well-educated labour force, well-trained labour force, and we are moving in the direction of knowledge-based industries, knowledge-based, so that gives you a broad outline of the kind of labour force that we envisage. May I also say that the financial sector is an area that we have identified for further activity. In fact, an opportunity has presented itself with the difficulties now associated with moving money in and out of the United States, New York. We're in the same time zone as New York. And therefore, look out for an international financial center developing in Port of Spain.
To rival Dubai, to rival Bahrain?
To rival New York.
That's pretty ambitious.
We'll watch and see.
This is where the money is. Huge, sprawling plants like Atlantic LNG have drawn investors from across the globe. All the major oil players are here: BP, British Gas, Spain's Repsol and Australia's BHP Billiton. They're all keen to cash in on the #1 energy economy in the Caribbean and Americas.
Success stories like Atlantic LNG have been a beacon for potential investors. The climate in Trinidad and Tobago is ripe for investment. We have a very stable democracy in Trinidad, which is one of the biggest wins for any potential investor. We have a government that is committed to monetizing our gas resources, so they're always receptive to new ideas. At the moment, the energy sector is where the major investment is taking place.
Phoenix Park is one of the Western Hemisphere's largest. The firm that built it was the first Caribbean company to directly tap US capital markets for investment funds. A sure sign that the project made sound business sense. The estimated capital inflow is set to total €3 billion over the next 3 years.
It has been an ideal destination. From an energy perspective, competitively priced energy, raw materials, has always been, of course, the #1 attraction. And then as well, having a skilled workforce that can be utilized in running these industries, operating them, and so has also been critical.
Here at Phoenix Park, they process the gas for all the industrial units on the Point Leases estate. We're talking almost 3,000 acres of what used to be sugarcane plantations, but now look more or less like this, churning out things like ammonia and methanol, propane and butane. And it doesn't stop here. They're building more plants further south for liquefied natural gas, aluminium and petroleum, and it's all worth millions of euros. This tank holds 102,000 cubic metres of LNG, and Trinidad and Tobago can fill it many times over with its 934 billion cubic metres of natural gas reserves. Modest perhaps by Middle Eastern standards, but it's impressive for a country this size.
Well, in the first 4 months of this year, we accounted for 73% of all U.S. imports of LNG, 71% of all U.S. imports of methanol, and just about 55% of all U.S. imports of ammonia. Right now, we are very dependent on the U.S. as a market. And one of the things we are going to have to consider is how we diversify that. We're doing that.
Diversification is key, though some of the answers are still in energy. In other words, downstreaming.
Well, I think that every country in the region needs to find its strengths. We're particularly trying to push two things. One is linking up the energy sector with the manufacturing sector in Trinidad. So the push to move the plants further downstream in terms of the products which they're producing, secondary, not just primary petrochemicals, and then to get that into the local manufacturing sector. That's something which we're pushing hard. And secondly, the development of the services sector, the energy services sector in particular, and exporting energy services to the rest of the hemisphere in particular, and even we're looking West Africa and Middle East and elsewhere as well.
After the break, we look closer at the policies behind the changing skyline and head to the beach to find sand, sea and a swimmingly good tourism industry.
Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the place for business. Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the place for business.
The skyline is changing in Trinidad and Tobago, and changing fast.
We don't like to look at it as a boom time. We like to look at it as moving to another level of growth, of sustainable growth. Boom implies, a temporary increase in fortunes. We would want to think that this is a permanent increase in fortunes, at least permanent over a span of time.
Cash from gas is being used to turn the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago into a developed nation by 2020. With human resources training programs, education initiatives and plans to build new, modern infrastructure, they're on a massive shopping spree. Doco is a wholly owned state company whose mission is to reshape and revitalise the urban landscape of Trinidad and Tobago. They have over 50 projects on the go, including the massive waterfront development of Port of Spain.
Is it just about facilities and buildings? The answer is no. It's about people. Now, initially, of course, it's about job creation. But at the same time as you're having that kind of job creation, there is the need to expand that skill set to be able to accommodate whatever future challenges may occur.
The economy is building momentum, but the boom has brought with it growing pains. Most industries are experiencing labour shortages, which free education will hopefully rectify in the future. Thirsty factories have left some houses with water shortages. The good times have also brought high inflation. In the last 2 years, clay blocks have gone up 200%. Another problem here is traffic jams.
The Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago's capital, is only a few square miles, but 300,000 cars pass through the city centre every day. The result? Massive jams all over town are just like this, every day on the way to work and every evening on the way home.
Perhaps the government is trying to do too much too soon. The IMF has expressed concern about the country's public spending.
Are you running before you can walk?
Not really. We are very aware of the need to curtail the inflation. We certainly are going to ensure that inflation does not get within double-digit figures. But there are many ways you do that. It is not necessarily curbing spending, but increasing the capacity of the country if you don't want to sacrifice your rate of development.
Inflation is sitting at 8.65%, High by international standards, but the government says expected for a country in its 12th year of growth.
As a country going through rapid growth, of course, we have some challenges moving forward. Because of the rapid growth in investment in the country, infrastructure maybe has not kept pace entirely with the rapid growth. So infrastructure is lagging slightly behind, but there are steps on the horizon to correct that. And over the next few years, I'm sure there'll be various bits of infrastructure in place that would make it easier for existing and new investors.
They say the beauty of Tobago is so spectacular, everyone wants a piece of it. The small island changed hands no less than 33 times until it finally ended up with the British. The Republic of Trinidad and Tobago doesn't see the tourism numbers of Jamaica or Barbados, but the industry has increased 100% over 4 years, and they want more investment.
The international tourism revenues estimated to be something in the region of 844 million TT dollars per year international, and we figure that the domestic tourism to Tobago accounts for about $1.2 billion per year.
With increasing flights to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the destination is set to rise on the European travellers' to-do list. With 60% of the market being from the United Kingdom and 10% from Germany, Tobago is targeting more visitors from Europe.
Taking all this in, it's no surprise that Trinidad and Tobago isn't one of the Caribbean's hidden treasures. After all, Columbus discovered it back in 1498. Now, of course, the big spenders are the tourists. The industry's worth around 275 million euros, but the government wants to see that get bigger. That's why they're offering potential investors 5 to 10-year tax breaks for developing hotels. Another reason to sip Trinidadian cocktails at sunset.
A hotel may also be granted accelerated depreciation and capital allowances on the construction costs. No depreciation is charged during the tax holiday period. Tax-exempt profits can be distributed tax-free by way of dividend. There are about 5,000 rooms on Tobago and 90,000 visitors a year. Only one brand hotel, the Hilton, is on the island, but over the next 3 or 4 years, more are hoped. While leisure tourism grows in Tobago, Trinidad is still limited to mainly business-related visitors. The Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is hoping to be the headquarters for the FDA and, in anticipation of a successful bid, are building a Hyatt.
Trinidad still will remain a business destination for some time to come. But today's business traveler is also a leisure traveler. Trinidad has to move away from the carnival tourist to an all-time tourist. And the all-time tourists today come to the destination where they get a total experience. And the total experience happens when you feel free and comfortable to walk around. And Trinidad, once they have better control on some of those social issues and this thing, and the government is working on that, Trinidad will benefit immensely.
Trinidad and Tobago isn't just a beautiful place to visit. With an estimated 100 billion euros of foreign investment, around 4,000 expats live here.
Hello, my name's Martin Robinson. I'm the General Manager for Atkins, running our oil and gas consultancy here in Port of Spain. This is my apartment, so why don't you come in?
Martin Robinson has lived all around the world for work, including Brunei, and he's only been here a couple of months. hence the rather sparse decor in his swanky company home.
Well, this is a nice apartment in a nice location. This would cost about €4,000 a month.
Expats tend to need generous accommodation allowances because renting in good, secure parts of town is expensive. Similar furnished